Hey folks, how you doing? Um, just testing out the tree cam once again. There's a little bit of echo coming from over there. Let me see if I can kill the echo. Okay, that should be better. Hopefully you can hear me all right. Little bit of bad news. Our special guest Dave Lismy will not be able to make it tonight. He's had a family emergency, and all my thoughts and prayers to Dave and his family. We're still gonna. The show must go on. The show must go on. So just fiddling with my setup here. So Trevor will be joining me at 7 p.m. for a Four Horsemen tribute show. This is going to be a Four Horsemen tribute show. So it's going to be pretty cool. We'll tell you a whole bunch of cool stories. Enjoy the tree cam. I will be back in a little bit. Hey, folks, it's LeBrain. Just once again, a little bit of an announcement to make. Dave Lismy will not be able to make the show tonight. He has had a family emergency. So tonight we're going to do a tribute show to the Four Horsemen in absence of the interview. So, all best wishes to Dave Lismy's family, and we'll hope to have him on soon. I'll be on in a little bit, just getting my coffee ready, but just wanted everybody to be aware of the schedule change for tonight. Cheers. Enjoy the sunset. Hey, folks, in case you're just tuning in now, just a reminder here. Unfortunately, we've had a schedule change. Dave Lismy will not be able to make the show tonight. He's had a family emergency. So, we're wishing Dave's family all the best and hope to have him on another time soon. In the meantime, we're going to do a tribute show to the Four Horsemen. We're just waiting on Trevor to arrive at around 7. I'll be back just getting a coffee made. Sorry about the schedule change.
can't put my thumbs up.
Crown Royal apple.
Slaint.
Captain Courageous, next plane to Vegas. I gotta go. Not so outrageous, next plane to Vegas. Win, place, oh, show me the money. Drink for my honey. It's only 35 to 1. Betting on the ponies. I'm here till the deal is won. Trust on yourself, just deal it on the belt. Behold what is to be seen. Knowing what I'm holding, got a handful of dreams. Captain Courageous, next plane to Vegas. I gotta go. Not so outrageous, next plane to Vegas. Win, place, or show me the latest on a plane to Vegas. Playing on the red and the black. Placing on a number 21 or under. Baby, stack after stack. Hey, winner, love that chicken dinner. Take it in a briefcase to go. A bit of lucky 7, hit me on 11. Make it in time for the show. Captain Courageous, next plane to Vegas. I gotta go. Not so outrageous, next plane to Vegas. Win, place, or show. Captain Courageous, next plane to Vegas. I gotta go. Not so outrageous, next plane to Vegas. Win, place, or show.
I think Mr. Braun's leg does understand the spirit of Sausage Fest quite well. This is what it's all about. And no sun back in Kitchener-Waterloo. That's unfortunate. Hopefully you can see the beautiful fireplace, fake fireplace behind me. And of course you can see the sunset cam. First time we're trying this. I had a better device that I was using, but it got overheated. So we are back to using the cell phone as the sunset cam. But welcome to the show. Again, making an announcement here. Dave Lismy has contacted me. He's not able to make the show tonight. They've had a family emergency. So in absence of Dave Lismy joining us tonight, Trevor and I are going to on with the show, and we are going to do a tribute to the Four Horsemen. And it's going to be awesome. In the meantime, we have in an upcoming show, we have a guest by the name of Robert Lawson, June 18th, with Super Deeks. And we will be broadcasting right from here at the cottage. And Robert Lawson is an author, and he is the author of this. As I struggle to tear the easy tear at the perforations packaging. There we go. Robert Lawson is the author of, wow, they double bagged it. Still Competition. The Listener's Guide to Cheap Trick, which was recently reviewed by Super Deeks. And he says it's excellent. So this is going to teach me everything that I need to know about Cheap Trick by Mr. Robert Lawson. And really looking forward to talking to him. I guess Deke just, oh, this is cool, man. Look, there's a picture of, I think that's Lawson with Cheap Trick there. Anyway, Deke was raving about this book, and Robert Lawson and him were talking, and I guess Robert's just cool to talk about rock and roll. So I am looking forward to having him on the show on June 18th. Very much looking forward to that. Test firing dodgy equipment you may or may not have made illegally at work. Priceless. Hiya. How are you doing, man? I'll play you another music video before Trevor arrives because I've got a whole bunch of music videos to play. But again, announcement to be made. Dave Lismy will not be joining us tonight. He's had a family emergency. So we are going to do a tribute to the Four Horsemen tonight in absence of Dave. Trevor will be here in about 10 minutes. In the meantime, we're going to play some more Max the Axe for you. This is a track called I Don't Advocate Drugs. Don't do drugs, kids. I don't advocate drugs. So, quick announcement again for those just tuning in. Dave Lismy contacted me about half an hour ago. He will not be able to make the show tonight. They have a family emergency. So, we wish the Lismy family all the best. And I'll check in with him in a couple days, and maybe we can reschedule. But yeah, so tonight Trevor and I will be doing just a tribute to the Four Horsemen in absence of Dave. And Trev is actually ready to go now. So let's start the show. Let's play the theme song and get rocking. Welcome to the show, everybody.
Ticket to anywhere and a glazed donut to go. LeBrain Train. LeBrain Train. All aboard.
Hey, Bang.
Mike, how's it going?
Good. How about you?
I'm well.
Excellent. Excellent.
I must admit something. I've watched a bunch of your LeBrain Trains, and I think that's the first time I have heard the intro.
Oh, well, that's the new intro, actually.
Well, okay, then that's why I haven't heard it. That's because it's brand new.
Well, the song is old. It's just a new video. That's all. But
Nice.
yeah, we try to update it every time we get a new guest on. So I guess we'll have to get it updated to have your face in there somewhere too.
Well, thank you.
So how are you doing tonight?
Good. I was looking forward to this, and when you gave me the news of Dave canceling for what's going on, I was a little upset, but I was also understanding. So
Yeah.
Crazy times, right?
Yeah. So for those just joining us, Dave Lismy had to cancel tonight. He has a family emergency to attend to. So we're just wishing him all the best, and maybe we'll be able to rebook him for another time. But for now, we're just wishing him all the best. And, sucks when stuff like this happens. And everything sucks right now in a pandemic. But
yeah. How are things your way? I know you're at the cottage right now, but
Kitchener-Waterloo's not too bad. I don't know what it's like. You're closer to the border, but that doesn't seem to matter anymore. The United States is doing better than us. So
yeah, we're okay. I think I read today that we were under 30 cases. So,
well, that's good.
I miss Ladino.
That's not too bad. 30 is a good day for us, but I've been
a lot less than yours though too, right? So
yeah. I noticed that ever since the United States reopened, my views are kind of going down on a Friday night. But that's to be expected. That's to be expected. This started as a thing to do on Friday nights because we had nothing to do.
Right.
So, but anyway, we'll just introduce you to the crowd because you're new. You're new. But when I first met you, it was the year 1994, and this was a band that we were both into.
Indeed. And to further that, I have,
Ooh.
and I don't know if you can read it.
Yeah, Canadian Tour 94.
It's authentic, purchased at the show, 1994. It was at Front 54 in Thorold, Ontario.
Wow.
The bar was about the size of my basement. It was ridiculous. It was loud. It was sleazy, and it was great. I don't know if it was before I met you or right around the time, but it was certainly 94 when we were at that show. So I don't think I started at the record store until, was it?
I'm going to say August, September.
I wanted to say August too, but yeah.
I started in July.
Yeah, right. The oldest employee, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. And literally
employee number one.
As well. So Thorold, remind me here, how far a drive is that?
It's like a hop, skip, and a jump from St. Catharines.
So that's actually a fair hike.
It's kind of between St. Catharines and Niagara Falls. Yeah.
Yeah. And not on very pleasant highways. So, you're talking hour and a half at least.
Yeah. It's there's nothing there. I'm surprised they even have a bar there, to be honest with you.
Right. I think, yeah, that's ringing a bell, Thorold.
And of all the places, for an upcoming band to book a show, I don't know how they got mixed up in Thorold, but that was something I wanted to ask Dave.
Yeah. I thought it might be fun to kind of go through Horsemen history album to album. But when I first met you shocked me because you're like, I have the first four Horsemen. And I was like, yes, so do I. Nobody said it was easy. And you said, no, I have this thing.
Yeah.
This is a reissue. But you had the original CD, and I don't know where you got that.
And you know what? It is sad for me to say, but I do not have the original anymore.
Right, but you did get a pretty penny for it on eBay.
That is correct.
Yeah.
But I did, as a result, go get it again.
Yeah.
The reissue, right? Much like same as yours.
Yeah.
Because it's something that everybody needs to have.
Right. And I remember you telling me you got to check out, I believe it was Hard Lovin' Man. and one thing we both really liked about the Horsemen were the lyrics. And Hard Lovin' Man, come on, baby, and see how hard I am. And then there's a line in there where he's talking about having a tattooed pecker and a Batmobile.
Yeah.
Now, what exactly is the Batmobile? Because I think you told me that was an actual car that he had. So
the Batmobile is a 69 Camaro Pro Street. Which is like not legal for road. It's racing only. But in the research I did, again, this is another question I kind of had for Dave because my knowledge of it kind of stops. If you notice in all the albums, Frank thanks his car.
Didn't notice.
It's in the liner notes for Nobody Said It Was Easy, and it's also in the liner notes for Getting Pretty Good at Barely Getting By.
I didn't notice that.
But in the second album, he actually pokes fun at the fella who's making it for him, as if it's a project that he's paying somebody to build it, but it's never actually been finished. So it was his car. It was a '69 Pro Street Camaro. That's all I know.
And I read in a Rip magazine interview that the tattooed pecker was also a real thing. for what it's worth. Apparently, these old magazines, I wish I still had them all. But I remember distinctly in this Rip magazine interview, I think they might have been on an airplane and he might have been talking to a stewardess. And, the Rip magazine reporter is writing everything down. And apparently he told the stewardess that it has eyes. like a snake, well, maybe.
That wouldn't surprise me.
No.
It sounds like Frank was a pretty colorful character.
Yeah.
Obviously I follow Dave on Facebook and there was a crowd of people that also follow Dave, a lot of whom were around in the Four Horsemen days. So there's a lot of people there that knew Frank, dated Frank, married to Frank. So right. I feel like those questions could have been answered. But yeah, I don't know that I would want to be the one to ask that question. Well,
I wasn't going to. But at the same time, you'd think that this band was just primed and ready for big time success, given the flamboyant rock and roll frontman. Like he could rival Axl Rose for drama.
Absolutely. And I'm, it's funny. Like I want all the bands I like to get really big and famous, and right. But also, I don't want the bands I really like to get big and famous, because then everybody else likes them.
We've had this conversation before. I know we have.
Blur song 2, right? There you go.
Right.
But yeah, so there's a lot of albums out in the world that are way less good as this one.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't know why they weren't bigger than they were.
Yeah. And it came out, at a time when we really needed a really good rock album, because the grunge stuff was just starting. And this was basic rock, produced by Rick Rubin, released on Deaf American.
And yes, and Rick Rubin, brings a lot of clout with him too. And I wanted to know how that all got mixed up.
I wanted to know if Rick Rubin ever wears shoes, because I don't think I've ever seen a picture of him in the studio wearing shoes. And he's usually lying on a couch. Yeah, he does look awfully bohemian, doesn't he? Oh my God. Like I was watching, I think it was the DVD that came with Metallica's Saint Anger Deluxe Edition. And it's them in the studio with Rubin and all these engineers. And Rubin's just lying on a couch with no shoes on the whole time. But that was quite a big deal, getting Rick Rubin on this sucker. But I guess their setback was that it was supposed to come out sooner, but Frank went to jail. So everything was out of whack for scheduling, and it ended up coming out in late 91 when grunge was now taking over. But it was one of those things where fate stepped in, or Frank stepped in, perhaps. Yeah. And the timing was screwed up. It's a great observation. Like, if it were released when it should have been, would it have been as big? Perhaps if it was released when it should have been, would it not been as big? Yeah. I don't think it had huge success. I do, however, remember the videos for both Nobody Said It Was Easy, Rockin' Is My Business, and eventually Tired Wings had pretty decent rotation on music. Yeah. My impression, if that means you're successful, then I guess they were. My impression was always that they were more successful in Canada, relatively speaking, than the United States. But again, that was a question I wanted to ask Dave. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I first encountered them with the Nobody Said It Was Easy video, and I hit record as soon as it came on. Just kind of, that riff sounded good. And then the singer came in at the end with the scream, and I was always a sucker for a singer that can really belt a good scream. And man, on that first album, Frank C. Starr is belting it out with vintage Brian Johnson. 100%. Yeah. Fantastic. Yes. I always used to describe them as AC/DC meets the Black Crowes, is how I used to describe them to people. But that's just my own ear, I guess. No, I hear that. There's definitely some Crows in there. Of course, that could be maybe the Deaf American connection playing tricks on my mind. But there's certainly some Southern in there. And, there's more of that later on. But this album is basically 12 tracks, I believe 12 tracks. So straight ahead rock and roll, more or less. There's a couple curveballs in there, like the third single, Tired Wings, has a really cool slide guitar riff. And that's almost more like a Zeppelin-y blues kind of sound. But then you also have something like Moonshine, where, if I'm not mistaken, the lead vocal for Moonshine was recorded with Frank over the phone from jail. Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it was just like a megaphone effect. I hadn't heard that take on it. I don't know where I'm getting that from. And again, that's a good question. I wish Dave could have been here tonight. Dave, call in if you can. Dave, I hope you're watching, Dave. I'm pretty sure he's not. But you're right. Like, it sounds like a megaphone, but again, I could swear that I read somewhere, it might have been that Rip magazine interview, I could swear that was recorded over the phone, and probably when Frank was in jail.
Well, and
That's
I
just-
totally believe that. In fact,
Yeah.
that is the story I'm now going to tell, because that is way cooler than a megaphone.
I really wish I didn't give away all my magazines. This is the mistakes we make in our 30s.
Yeah.
Oh shit. If anybody, yes, from jail. If anybody's just joining us, unfortunately, Dave Lismy is not going to be able to make it tonight. So Trev and I are just going to pay tribute to the band, and that's what we're doing. We're talking about the four Horsemen. So yeah, this album did, like you said, it did fairly well as far as we know, and but grunge continued to roll in, and these guys, they kind of disappeared.
Yeah, if you think about let's go back to 1991, right?
Right.
A lot of stuff happening in the rock world, and I'm not even going to touch on grunge. Like AC/DC Razor's Edge had just come out in September of 90,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Black Crowes Shake Your Moneymaker was prior to that.
Yep.
Then you had Metallica's Black Album in 91.
August.
So there's some massive rock and roll movements, even still in
In
on the verge of
September.
grunge, right?
In September of that year, Use Your Illusions 1 and 2.
Yeah. So I mean, they were.
For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge went to number 1.
Oh, is that 91? I thought that was
Yeah.
earlier than that.
It was like June or July of 91, but yeah, For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge went. I remember there were like 5 really good number 1s that summer, and one of them was For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge for sure.
So the climate for rock was great.
Yeah, it
especially
was.
two of those bands I just mentioned is who I used to describe the Horsemen. So I mean, if you were a fan of AC/DC's comeback in '90, I call it a comeback. It wasn't really, but kind of it was.
It wasn't a way, because I believe that album outsold Blow Up Your Video by a significant margin.
Oh, Razor's Edge? Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
what the numbers are, but I bet you it's probably their second or third biggest album catalog-wise.
Yeah, I bet you my
Easy.
buddy Mike Fraser could tell us too.
So if you were a fan of any of the above aforementioned bands, Four Horsemen were right up your alley.
Yeah,
Really.
yeah, absolutely. And I think also, if you're looking at trends of the late 80s going into the 90s, people were getting tired of the more ballady, keyboardy kind of rock bands. Like, things were going in a harder edge direction anyway. And the Four Horsemen fit into what I think people were craving at that time. Less crap on the radio and more straight ahead rock. A lot of bands like Poison and Bon Jovi kind of hit a decline at that period.
Yeah, and and I don't get me wrong, I love metal, hair metal, all that 80s stuff.
Yeah.
But really, if you listen to it now, it sounds like it's from the 80s.
Yes.
A lot of it does. Some of it
Yes.
doesn't. The Four
You either
Horsemen
want that or you don't want that.
Yeah, but the Four Horsemen, you can put it on now, and it doesn't. You wouldn't go, oh, that's from 1986. Because it's
No.
got the keyboards and it doesn't sound like a time, right?
No. It sounds out of time. Absolutely. And one other thing I wanted to mention as well that you observed way back in the day. Actually, you know what? I'll wait till getting pretty good, barely getting by before I mention this. But you had a really good observation back then. So they had kind of like a period where they were kind of broken up, kind of not broken up after this album. I don't know, drama going on. Frank was out of the band. Frank formed another band with somebody else. I can't remember who.
It was called Rain. Rain, like REIGN, I think.
Okay.
And they basically did cover songs and a couple Four Horsemen tunes. I think it was Rain. Jeez, now you got me wondering.
I can't. I really should have. I was going to ask Dave for these questions. But I guess Haggis at one point kind of did a Four Horsemen, tried to resume the Four Horsemen with this album that was only released way later on. But recorded during that blackout period. So the lineup here, Apparently, he refused to work with Frank ever again. So the lineup here is lead singer Tim Beattie, Haggis on rhythm guitar, banjo, piano, slide, Dave Lismy on lead and rhythm, Dwayne D. Young on bass guitar, and Les Warner from The Cult on drums. So he would have been a bandmate of Haggis in The Cult. And I know at some point or another during the making of this album that Dimwit was also involved before he passed away. So that was another thing that happened was the drummer Dimwit Montgomery, who's a Canadian boy, he passed away during the interim. But this is a very different album. I don't know if you have this.
I have a copy of it, if you want to say. I don't have the physical.
It's very different, as you know. It's very Southern, laid back, kind of the band meets Skinnerd, I guess, might be a good way of putting it.
Yeah, it's not rocking at all, I would say.
Right. And I think Haggis realized that at some point, realized that it was not, didn't sound like the Four Horsemen. Hey, Deke. So it kind of sat on the shelf, and it's really kind of unfinished. If you listen to it, it's very rough and very unfinished. But there's some stuff in there, some good stuff. Like Mojo Hannah kind of rocks. The version of Amazing Grace at the end here goes on for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, and that's mostly Dave, isn't it?
I think a lot of that guitar work has to be Dave. Yeah, there's a few guitar players credited. But
there's a lot that went on after Nobody Said It Was Easy was released. Then, as you said, up until Getting Pretty Good came out, even after Getting Pretty Good came out.
There's more lineup changes after that, yeah.
Yeah. So the first time I saw the Horsemen was the original lineup in 94. The second time I saw them, I'm a little hazy on the date, but I think it was pre-96. So somewhere after 94, but earlier than 96, I saw them in Kitchener at Lulu's. And they were, I believe they were opening for Nazareth. But I didn't care. I didn't go to see Nazareth. In fact, we walked out after the Four Horsemen and left. But that show was, Dimwit had already passed away, and Ben Pape had quit the band. So they'd replaced him with a guy named Pharaoh.
Right. Pharaoh Barrett, I think, is his name.
Sure, it's not his Christian name, but anyway, we call him Pharaoh.
Right.
So Pharaoh, and I think it was Randy Cook, or no, Randy Cook was on the album. He went
Randy
on to
Cook
record,
did play in the album,
but I don't know if he was the touring drummer.
You know, I wanted to ask Dave this question as well, but I read something about Chuck Biscuits being involved on drums at some point during this interim period.
I've heard that too, and again, I don't know if he may have been the drummer that night too. Here's another little piece of I don't know if you can see it. I make these things for myself because it makes me happy.
We're going to zoom in on you here.
So
we do close up.
This is the original ticket from Front 54.
Wow.
And you probably won't be able to see that.
That's the original pressing of the album on Deaf American. And an autograph
by Frank Starr.
Frank, yeah. I can see the word Starr, yeah.
That was the night of the Kitchener Lulu show. I met Frank and Pharaoh after the show.
Oh, a buddy of yours is watching tonight, Mr. Colin Jones.
Colin Jones.
Look at this. Getting Pretty Good at Barely Getting By was completed with Lismy, new bass player Pharaoh, and Dimwit's brother, ex-Black Flag and Danzig drummer Chuck Biscuits. Now, Randy Cook's picture is in the he is in the booklet, Randy's picture, but
Randy
there you
Cook
go.
is credited with the album.
Randy Cook's a Canadian guy that I first encountered as part of Rick Emmett's band when Rick Emmett first went solo after Triumph. And he's played with a bunch of people since. Like Andy Curran, I think. I can't remember all the different people that he's played with.
So he was on Rick Emmett's solo album?
Yes, absolutely. The first one, absolutely.
The song Drive Time and...
Yep, that's Randy Cook.
Oh, really?
Yep. Yeah, that's when I first encountered that particular drummer. But yeah, like after Haggis pulled the plug on this version, then Lismy kind of decided to continue on with this version.
Yes.
And this is a great album. So the story here that I wanted to tell is during the 90s, there was a period where you'd have a lot of bands like the Four Horsemen who were dropped from their major record label deal. In this case, they were on Deaf American. This thing came out on Magnetic Air, which is a Canadian label of all. Again, I'd love to ask some of these questions.
And recorded at Metalworks in Toronto.
Owned by Gilmour of Triumph.
Mm-hmm.
I was skeptical of this album because of it's the 90s. It's a sequel album without what I considered, the founding kind of main guy, Haggis. I believe he wrote most of the material on the first album. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of looking at this and I'm skeptical and I'm saying, it's on Magnetic Air. It's probably really cheaply produced. It's not the whole band. I'm just going to pass on it.
Lineup change.
And there were so many times in the 90s that you bought an album by a band that you liked and it's on a downscaled label and it's missing some of the members and you're disappointed. So I said, you know what? I'll just... And then you said, listen to it. You said, listen to it. And you were right. We've debated many times over the years whether this album is superior to the first. And if you could make that argument. You could.
Yeah. And again, these are all things I wanted to ask Dave. Like the first album, Frank has a lot of high register notes, a lot of raspy voice stuff, which sounds really cool.
Yes.
But on this album, he's a lot more tame. He's a lot more clear voiced.
You're catching a lot of flack here for walking out on Nazareth.
Yeah, well, I have another story about a different band, same thing. But anyway, yeah, and the story I've heard is that Frank and Haggis clashed so much that Frank was tired of Haggis always making him hit those high notes. And that's what sort of caused them to fight all the time. And he said it killed his voice live to do the songs. And, they wanted to play them in a different key. So Frank didn't have to hit those high notes live. So anyway, now Haggis left the band, right?
Right. Apparently you stayed till this flight tonight, apparently.
Yeah. I don't remember that. I thought we left. Show's over, man. But on the second album, or third, I suppose, Frank's voice is a lot more tame, and I always attributed that to him wanting to sing like that, but Haggis not, letting him sing like that.
I'm sure that you're right. Like that takes a lot out of your voice, but he did a great job on this, regardless of the change in his vocal register.
I agree.
A song like we'll talk about "Song for Absent Friends." Which is a brilliant, their first ballad, I guess. Well, not including this, but their first a ballad, really, a song about Dimwit, and it's freaking, it gets you, man. It's serious.
What? I still to this day use that song. I remember, we went through a phase of all these rock stars passing away. Bowie, Prince. Tom Petty, all these guys. When one of my, idols passes away, I still play this song and have a drink and think about those guys. Sounds corny, I know. I'm sorry.
That's quite all right.
But that song, it is killer. Even if you don't know the people who the song was written about, you can apply it to anybody that you know. It's fantastic. Fantastic.
Here's the guy right there.
Big Dim.
There's the guy. You are 100% right. There's some really haunting lyrics in there. Like he picks up the phone and he expects to hear his voice on the other end. And, but it's also kind of like a celebration song, it's like, I'll raise a glass to you. But absolutely nailed it. And this album proved that Lismy can write songs just as good as Haggis did on the first album. Again, it's a long album. There's 13. I remember you also pointed out the track Hot Rod with, again, a great Frank lyric. I got the hottest rod around. What's some other good stuff on here? Getting pretty good, barely getting by the title track.
Even the what is it? Is it Drunk Again? Which is
Drunk Again.
The Rick Derringer cover.
Still Alive and Well.
Oh, Still Alive and Well. Sorry.
Yeah.
They're all good. Yeah, Living These Blues.
These songs rip, but then you hit track 9 and you're back in business again. And this is Frank's statement to all the wussy rock and rollers that are talking about how fame and fortune's got them down.
I mean, he's not wrong.
No, he was right. This is, again, the perspective of the 90s.
Yeah, and oddly enough, to me, that's probably the worst song on the album.
Really? I disagree.
And that's the song. Remember they used that in that G.I. Joe movie?
I wanted to ask Dave how that happened.
Retaliation, yeah.
Yeah. Because it's such a weird song to have in that movie. It's nothing to do with G.I. Joe. It's about being in a rock band.
And again, how does these people that make movies, how did somebody go, oh, I got a song for that. We gotta get this thing virtually no one knows about. Let's put their song in there.
From an obscure Canadian label.
Yeah. Again, where's Dave? Seriously.
Yeah. Dave, we have so many questions for you. You know what? When we're done here, I'll send Dave the link, and maybe at some point he'll get to watch, and maybe he can answer some of these questions.
Yeah.
That was my big question, is how does Back in Business Again fit in with G.I. Joe? Because the lyrics are so specific. I kind of had some time. What did he say? Something about how he had a couple of years off, babe, to kind of take some time. You saw these wussy rock and rollers talking about how fame and fortune's got them down. Well, I say we round up all these little bastards and send them back to their nowhere town. Because I was born on the stage and I plan to stick around.
It almost sounds better when you read it than when Frank sings it. I didn't love that song, although I love it because it's Four Horsemen. That song it's too cheesy and geeky, I guess, for me. I don't know. I still like it. I just think it's the weakest one on the album. That's all.
Wow. So we're gonna have to harshly disagree on this. Harshly.
It reminds me. Do you remember Slick Toxic?
Had a hell of a time.
So they had a similar thing that happened to them. They had a out of the
I Want a Fucking Gun,
blazing awesome debut album.
Yeah.
And then mysteriously dropped from the record label, and then second album comes out on an indie label, and they have a song called EMI.
No. EMI was the Pistols cover.
Oh, I thought that was about the record label. I thought that was.
It is, but the Pistols wrote it. They were also on EMI.
What was the one you were singing?
I want a fucking gun to blow my manager away. Kill his ass to make my fucking day.
What's that one called?
I want a gun.
Okay, then that's the one.
Gun.
That's the one I'm thinking of. It's a similar sort of piss off, right?
Heavy as hell, though. Like Slick Toxic went really heavy on that second album.
Yes, and not like they were on the first.
Our guest that was on last week, Sean Kelly, really good friend of Nick Walsh from Slick Toxic. They worked together on that Metal on Ice EP. But I'm sure maybe Nick Walsh is somebody I could get on the show at some point.
Yeah.
You never know. Now we have some clarification on Randy Cook here. Randy Cook was on Kim Mitchell's Kimosabi, which is a great album.
Yep.
That I talked about when Andy Curran was on, because Andy Curran's on that album.
Written by Andy Curran, yep.
And he's right. He was on Lee Aaron's, I believe it was her self-titled album with Only Human. I think that might have been where I first got him. David Usher, Sass Jordan, Gillen's Inn. I knew that. Phil X, Carol Pope, Alana Miles, Rain Maida, and tons more.
So I was at Kim Mitchell is from Sarnia, which is where I live now. And he played a show here. I'm going to say, let's say 5 years ago. And I somehow got mixed up into the road crew. So the guy I work with was a member at a Taekwondo club, and the event people had asked the Taekwondo club to work security. So him knowing that I was a Kim Mitchell fan, he asked me if I wanted to come down and help. And of course I said yes. which meant I got to watch the entire show for free. At like front of the stage, like my back was to the stage, and then there in front of me there was the row of gates, and then the crowd. So I was literally watching the show from Kim's feet.
Wow.
And he opened for Tom Cochran, so we got to stay for the Tom Cochran. Anyway, after Kim's show, he had to remove everything from the stage so that Tom Cochran could come out. And they're like, hey, can you come on up and help us? So I'm taking apart Kim Mitchell's drum set and moving microphone stands. I stole 2 guitar picks.
Oh my God.
I'm moving all Kim's gear. Like I'm carrying guitar cases off the stage, and I'm talking to all the road crew. Right, these are Kim's road crew guys, right? And the one guy in the truck who's loading the truck and he's putting everything where it goes. He's like, we got talking, and he's like, I've been with Kim for 28 years or whatever, and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, wow, that's awesome. So we start talking about guys we know, and then he said, yeah, and that guy, he's been the road manager for. And he rhymes off a bunch of bands. He's like, oh, he's been the road manager for these guys, blah, 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 4 Horsemen. And I'm like, what? So I go talk to him. And he's like, oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, the show in 94, we came up to Ontario. Oh, yeah, Thorold, yeah, I remember. That's awesome. I remember that. Yeah, Randy Cook, he says to me. He's like, yeah, Randy Cook, he's a buddy of mine. He was, I stood up in his wedding. I'm like, whoa. What? So I'm in around. Yeah, that's a weird connection to what we're talking about right now. But that all came back to me.
This album. I want to see the credits and see like who's credited here. Well, it clearly says Randy Cook drums in the credits,
yeah,
but I guess the credits don't match necessarily.
I think there's something else in there that says like additional drums by.
That could be. They thank the Gas Works in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
Dedicated to the memory of Dimwit Montgomery, whose glass will always be full.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see.
Yeah, it doesn't say anything, does it?
Might be wrong,
oddly enough, if you go inside the booklet, they've got pictures of Frank, Dave, Farrell, and Dimwit.
Yes.
None of Randy Cook.
That's true. So, yeah, these look like studio photos, judging by that picture of Dave there. And there's Frank at the microphone. And where's Farrell? There's Farrell there with that stand-up bass. That's another question I wanted to ask. Did he play that stand-up bass on the album? You don't see that in rock very often.
No, especially not like the Four Horsemen rock either.
Yeah.
Right?
But so there you go. Apparently, and who is to doubt Colin Jones? But apparently Chuck Biscuits is the drummer on the album. And I would not doubt Colin Jones. I have no reason to. Mr. Litwiller is saying hello. Hope he bumps into you at a show again someday. And if we hope, we all hope for that someday.
Indeed.
So back to this album. The drama continued. They had a great album in the can, and then Frank was, I believe, hit on a motorcycle by a drunk driver, and he was in a coma.
Yeah,
and he was in a coma for a lot of years, 4 years, I think.
Yeah, sure. I know it was more than 2. That's all I know.
Yeah, he was in a coma for a long time, and the show had to go on, so they got Ron Young from Little Caesar to sing lead vocals, and neither of us have ever heard Ron Young with the Four Horsemen.
No.
Totally different kind of singer as far as I'm concerned. I would have liked to have heard it, but I suppose that was never meant to be a permanent arrangement, although Dave would have to.
Yeah, maybe they thought, once Frank comes out of the coma, we'll be good to go again. And then they were just sort of patching a hole so they could finish the tour, right? Right. And unfortunately, Frank never came out of that coma.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I heard that he did, but he had forgotten how to talk, and he didn't recognize a lot of people. But then, the complications were that he passed away. So,
regardless of what happened with his accident, the eventual consequences was that he did pass away a few years later. Which that if there was ever a chance for a Four Horsemen reunion, it died with Frank.
Unfortunately, it's hard to get the band like that back together. I'm glad that Dave is still around, and even if let's say Haggis decided to, I'm gonna put my feelings aside and do this reunion. But without Frank, it seems kind of pointless.
Yeah, and you see it so often today when you've got a band reunite with some of the members, but the singer didn't survive for whatever reason. And I really hate to point out specific bands because somebody out there is going to say, well, you're wrong. But like a band like Warrant, like Janie Lane is so identifiable with Warrant. And
I say, Mike, say what you want.
Okay, fine. I'm never going to get Warrant on them, unfortunately. Now I've screwed up my chance of getting Warrant. But
that's a great one. You're absolutely right. To me, Warrant died when Janie Lane died.
Yeah, and we have two versions of Great White, one with Jack Russell and one without. And I kind of say, again, I might be wrong here, but what's the point of Great White without Jack Russell?
I agree. It's hard for me to, and there's been very few bands in history that have done it. After losing a frontman, that's the hardest guy to replace. Yeah.
So late in the career too, and then replacing
once you're
with
established, right? I honestly don't know how AC/DC did it, but they did it.
And they could have done it a third time with Axl. They could have if they'd recorded an album. They could have.
Okay, but Axl was already established.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you're talking Brian Johnson in 1980. Nobody really knew who he was.
Right. Nobody had seen Geordie. And even if they had, Brian Johnson sang very differently when he was in Geordie, as you and I well know, because we used to, working at the record store, we'd get in albums from it's like, Geordie, you got to play it, and then it's really different.
Yeah, it almost sounds like early Nazareth to me.
Right, it does actually. And then there was another one that came in. You're like, Bon Scott's Fraternity. We have to check out what Bon Scott's Fraternity sounded like, and it's not very rock at all.
No,
it's very croony.
We know, yeah.
No, yeah. So like there's really, as far as I'm concerned, even with Haggis, even with Dave, it would be very, very difficult to resurrect the name. And wisely, they have not attempted to do so. But what they have done is at least they've done a really good series of reissues and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So we have all these great reissues. We have a live CD, DVD compilation, Left for Dead. This is excellent. I don't know if you have this.
I do.
It is really excellent. We have a live album called Death Before Suckass.
And
right, and I believe that is the DVD version of Death Before Suckass, which I wish I had. Wish I bought that. Wish I had that. And then they reissued the albums, everything except for Getting Pretty Good, with bonus tracks. So this thing that used to only have the 4 tracks has now been expanded to like 9, including a demo version of Rockin' Is My Business. There's a great tune on here called Bring On the Girls. This live Death Before Suckass thing, this has an unreleased track on here called Can't Get Next to You, which isn't on the album. That's a neat track. Nobody Said It Was Easy has bonus tracks on it as well, wherever they're listed. Yeah,
I don't have the reissue of that one for some reason, but I do have the bonus tracks somewhere.
3 bonus tracks on this one. Unreleased track written by Dimwit called She's Got It. It says an old tune that didn't make the cut when it was decided which songs to mix for inclusion. So that's a solo writing credit by Dimwit. Then there's a second version of Homesick Blues with Tim Beattie on harmonica, and Tim Beattie later became the second lead singer of the Four Horsemen. So that's an interesting bonus track. And then there's a track called Born to Boogie, which is a rare songwriting contribution from Frank C. Starr.
See, I kind of thought Frank wrote songs anyway, or maybe, sorry. Does he mean the lyrics?
I think he means the music. Maybe. I don't know. Okay. Then there's this thing, which has yet more bonus tracks on it. Like, they did a great job of these reissues. This is a beautiful double vinyl set.
Is that the white vinyl one?
Yeah. Well, I think it's black and white.
Oh.
Let me just grab a record here. Oh, great. It doesn't say what the bonus tracks are. Anyway, trust me, there's bonus tracks on this thing. I think there was an instrumental band cover. Actually, I have it in my music folder. Just one moment. I'll just read it straight out of my music folder. I liked that they just kept digging up more bonus tracks and making it worth your while to buy the album for the third time. So I wanted to, compliment Dave on the great job that they've done with these reissues. Okay, so the bonus tracks on this thing, there's a version of Tired Wings with a different opening. There's a version of 75 again with alternate vocals. Can't Stop Rockin' with an alternate take. A band song instrumental, The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down. A jam on Can't Get Next to You. And then a very, very short interview with Haggis from a radio station in Calgary in like 1991. So, they just gave you so much value every time they reissued these things. So well done, Dave. Well done, Dave.
Yeah, it leads me to it makes me wonder if they have more, right? Like what other stuff?
Right.
Were there more tracks from Getting Pretty Good at Barely Getting By? And what I read was that Dimwit actually was there for some of the recording of Getting Pretty Good at Barely Getting By.
Yeah, that's very possible.
So I wonder if they have tracks with him actually on it that never made the album, right?
They only find out. Here's an announcement for you. Jacob Moon has confirmed that he will be joining us on the show Saturday, June 19th, at a time to be announced. I don't know if you know who Jacob Moon is.
I'm trying to process it in my head right now. It sounds familiar.
I would say he might be best known to you for his Rush covers. He did a rooftop version of Subdivisions from in Hamilton at sunset on a roof. And he did a version of, I think it was Something for Nothing on the Rush 2112 box set. But he's sorry?
He's just a musician?
Yeah, he's a singer-songwriter from Southern Ontario. I don't know exactly where he's from, if it might be Hamilton. But Eric Litwiller actually is personal friends with Jacob Moon, and I will be having him on June 19th. We'll talk about that Rush experience. He's also he was tapped to open up for Marillion when they played in Montreal, so that's kind of a neat thing too. Or play with, maybe not opening, but he did play with Marillion. Anyway, we'll talk about that June 19th.
Yeah.
Back to Lisme once again. Great reissues. And I don't know what's going on with the Four Horsemen store, if it's still out there. I don't think it is. I think they've shuttered the Four Horsemen store. So wherever you can find these, I do recommend the reissues for the bonus tracks.
Yeah, the sound quality is probably not going to be. It might be a bit better, but certainly for the reissues, I don't know. To be honest, the reissues are probably going to be harder to find than the originals.
Probably.
Because anybody that buys a reissue probably isn't getting rid of it.
I wanted to point one thing out to Dave that I miss from. I gave away my original. I probably wouldn't do it anymore, but I used to replace my originals and give them away rather than keep both copies. But I kind of wish I kept both copies, and I'll show you why. There's just a picture inside the original CD that used to just make me laugh. And I'll put it on screen here. And unfortunately, it's not in any of the reissued versions.
Because there's no booklet, you mean?
No, it's just, it'll make sense why. Just a moment here. Chrome tab, there we go. Okay, so you can see that. It's an ad for Aristides the Tailor. They put an ad for this Aristides the Tailor inside the original CD. So I'm kind of thinking this guy probably, the business address and telephone number are no longer valid. But the picture of the foot with the bell-bottom pants.
Looks like
and
Dave,
the little right. And the caption, for a mighty purty pair of pants, call Aristides the Tailor. And it's just one of those things that I thought was so funny that you could only get in the original CD, not the reissue. for I guess
Okay.
obvious reasons.
I have the original, but the cover is in that frame I just showed you,
Right, right.
so I could take it out. But it would. I think you should call that number right now and see who answers.
Well, I am at the family cottage right now, and that number would be long distance on my mother's phone bill. So I'm going to decline your kind offer there.
Oh.
I just want to clarify, we are not being ghosted tonight. Dave had a family emergency, and he could not make it tonight. So that is why we are doing this little tribute instead. And it's unfortunate, but we hope Dave will be back to answer some of these questions at some point in the future. I'll send him this video, and he can see what we've been talking about.
I think you were alluding before to the getting pretty good at barely getting by, the structure of the album.
Right. So I wanted to talk about the thing that you noticed about how every Four Horsemen album ends
With, like a barn burner, and then it turns into a bit of a belly rubbing ballad. And they're just fantastic, epic tunes.
extended tunes.
Yeah. And they're almost, if you listen to the album sort of back to back, it's almost like they made Nobody Said It Was Easy, and they're like, and that was a hit and everybody loved it. So let's just do the same thing on this new album. Right. The songs are almost in the same structure. Like, they start out with a couple barn burners, and then it goes a little slow, and then it builds back up. And like the structure of each song is almost the same, which I don't dislike. I think they're great. I just noticed that it's almost a carbon copy of the first album.
Yes.
In the song placements, and the epic one at the end, and
on the first album, it's a song called "I Need a Thrill" / Something Good, which is kind of like a two-parter. Yep. And on the second album, it's "What the Hell Went Wrong," which, even though it's one song, it does kind of like have a two-parter structure.
Yeah.
And on even
the tempo change,
and amazingly enough, you can even see the pattern on this album here, where it ends with this amazing version of "Amazing Grace," and like a two-parter, it goes into this crazy jam at the end, this guitar solo-y jam. So they had a structure that worked for them. They say AC/DC had a formula. Well, there's a little bit of a formula for you.
And again, these are all things I wanted to ask Dave, right? Like, was that the band saying, let's do this? Or was that the producer? Or how did that... Yeah. Did they consciously do that? Or did it just come out and nobody really knew that they were doing that?
I'd love to know the answer. I think those two songs are naturals for ending an album.
Maybe he'll go tell me to piss off, because that's not true, right? It's like that you're just the one that thinks that.
Right. Where the hell have you heard? Where'd you get this idea from?
You think we copied our first album?
Screw you, man.
But anybody who doesn't have these albums, if you ever see them, you really need to pick them up.
Yes, any version. Doesn't have to be these.
You may not have the same experience that we had, listening to it, at the time and climate that we did. But you can't beat it for a rock album. Specifically, Nobody Said It Was Easy, and I will throw Getting Pretty Good in there too. Like, they're
absolutely.
I still listen to them today.
Yeah, well, I've been listening to them a lot over the last couple of weeks anyway, including the live albums. But they really are. They still stand up. I can't believe this is 30 years old this year. 30 years old.
Oh, man, I know.
And it still sounds fresh.
I
love how it opens. You can hear Haggis say something like, "We've been waiting 4.5 fucking years," or something like that.
Wait for fucking what? Yeah. That I remember. I was high school for me, obviously. I remember, this is a nod to Colin, who I think is watching. We drove around in his brother's Camaro and blasted Nobody Said It Was Easy, and I think Warrant Cherry Pie as well. That was the other. I think that was 91 as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, 90.
And Andy Curran, Self-Titled.
No tattoos. Gotta stay cool.
That was right then too. All three of those were in Chris's car, man.
And
Well,
just since you said Andy Curran, just a reminder, Andy Curran will be back on June the 12th. Man, this
That's
schedule's
cool.
getting full, man. June 12th, Andy Curran. June 18th, I don't know if you saw this, Robert Lawson, author of Still Competition, The Cheap Trick Guide. June 25, we have Brian Hamilton from the band Storm Force. July 2, we have the engineer, mixer, Grammy Award nominated engineer mixer Ryan Williams, and now we've booked Jacob Moon as well for June 19th. We got a busy schedule coming up here.
That's cool.
I'm disappointed though that all this is happening right when the United States is opening up and our views are dipping. But what can you do? What can you do?
Yeah,
At least
people don't want to be home anymore, right?
no. And can you blame them? I mean,
No.
like this has been since March of 2020. This has been every Friday night for me. That's a long time. It's been a lot of fun, but believe me, there's times where I'm wondering if life will ever return to normal. We're finally starting to see some signs of that, possibly, potentially. I hope.
Yeah, we're talking about opening up the borders again in a couple of weeks, but who knows if that's true.
Who knows? I know that we have some concert announcement coming up for November, Genesis. And
Yes, double shows.
Yes, and I've been skeptical in the past whether these shows will actually happen or not. But let's keep an open mind, I suppose, and hope.
Yeah,
a lot can happen.
Whether I would want to see that or not, I've never seen Genesis, and I love Genesis, but I'm not sure if now's the right time.
Now is definitely an interesting time. Our mutual friend Tom Morwood says that he would not go see Genesis with Phil Collins sitting and his son playing drums. They recommend going to see Steve Hackett's whatever he's got. He's got a Genesis Experience show that he tours with. So that's where Tom is banking his ticket money. But, it is Genesis. It is Phil Collins, regardless of the fact that he can't play drums anymore.
Yeah, and I grew up, with the Phil Collins era Genesis. So I have a soft spot for Phil Collins and Genesis. So, but I just mean I don't know if he could be the front man he used to be or hit the notes anymore. So I wouldn't want that to ruin it for me,
Hitting the notes is one thing. The voice is always... I'm a Kiss fan, and it's heartbreaking to see what's going on with Paul Stanley, to be totally frank. As a frontman, though, I don't know. Like, Dave Grohl did a freaking amazing job sitting in a chair, and Axl Rose did an amazing job sitting in a chair. So you never know. Like, who would have thought Dave Grohl and Axl Rose could put on an amazing rock show sitting in a chair? But they did. Yeah,
well, let's put them in the chair when they're 70, though, and see what happens, right?
No, that's true. That is the big difference. Oh, somebody looked up Aristides the Tailor. I don't get this comment, but anyway, he looked up the address for Aristides the Tailor.
I might call it.
Should call Sharon.
Maybe we'll have another show about what happened when I called the number.
Right, an entire show about the search for Aristides the Tailor.
Maybe at the very least, I'll get some really nice pants.
It's a mighty purty pair of pants is what the actual liner notes say. I had something else I wanted to talk to you about. Now it just flipped my mind because we're getting close to the 8:00 mark, and I figure that's a good place to call it a night. Oh man, I can't remember what I was going to say. Oh well, it'll come to me. Regardless, once again, we're sorry that Dave couldn't make the show tonight, but we do love this band, and we hope he's doing okay, and hope his family's doing okay. The Four Horsemen never got the amount of credit that they deserve for those 2 albums they made. Absolutely. That's my bottom line. And I've had discussions about the Four Horsemen with buddies of mine that are more geared towards the grunge part of the 90s, and they don't get what I love about them. Like, it's just another AC/DC clone band. But I don't know. I guess there's just something about it. Maybe you had to be there at that time.
Yeah, timing is, a lot of what the music industry relies on, I think. But these guys, I don't think although Frank was in a band prior to the Horsemen.
He was in
Alien. You ever
Right.
hear of those guys?
I've seen a video of them on YouTube.
Yeah,
Before
they're-
them, he was in a band called Sin with Rick Fox from Wasp,
Wow.
SIN. And he was like makeup, kind of heavy metal singer.
Well, an Alien was kind of like hair metal, right?
Yeah.
For lack of a better term. So I wondered how the Four Horsemen was born. Like you got to think people play music that they like, right?
Right.
So to be in a band like this, and then that didn't work, so now I'm going to be in a band like how does that? I mean, I know that hair metal and what they played wasn't too far of a stretch from each other, but they're very different bands. Like Frank's singing is completely different.
Yeah.
So how do you morph from I want to play this kind of music to I want to play this kind of music now?
I think when he did this kind of music, he found his niche much more than the other stuff.
Yes.
But there's a whole stew of ingredients there with haggis and Lismi, and of course you can't discount the Rick Rubin influence too. I'm sure that he steered that album quite a bit.
Yes. And you know what? I've asked sort of Dave and I talked a few times over the past couple of years over Facebook about little dumb things like that. And a few times he said, "Oh, that was Rubin's influence. That was Rubin. That was all Rubin."
Yeah.
In fact, one of the things I noticed was, the logo, the head.
Yeah.
So there was a wrestling troupe, right, from WCW, called
Right.
Four Horsemen,
That's right. Yes.
and their logo was the same, right? So I asked Dave that. I said, "Hey, wouldn't you sue these guys for stealing your logo?" And he's like, "Oh, no, that was Ruben. Ruben had a buddy who was in wrestling and let him borrow the logo for the Horseman album."
Wow.
So that's how that came about. The logo wasn't Dave's. Apparently it was Ruben that suggested use this, right?
Wow. Who would have thought?
So-
Never would have thought that. But then again, it was Rubin's label. It wasn't just that he was the producer. He was also the label exec.
Yeah,
So,
and if you think about who else was on, Deaf American, there's a lot like Dan Baird. I wrote a bunch down. Masters of Reality,
yeah.
Johnny Cash, Danzig, Tom
Yeah.
Petty for a while, Raging Slab. Remember them? They were about as close as the Horse
Yes.
in. They had a song called "Don't Dog Me."
That's right. Don't Dog Me.
Around.
Yep.
Sir Mix-a-Lot was on.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if Dave met any of these guys.
I wonder.
label mates, when they have their big label party.
He was out when Illegal Alien came up. Boy, he hasn't been in for a long time then. That's an old track.
Yes.
Jeez, man.
86.
Yeah,
Would you
about that. 86, 87-ish. Yeah.
And here's one you'll appreciate, Mike. Who else was on Def Jam Records? Wesley Willis.
Oh, my God. Nobody knows who I'm talking about anymore when I talk about Wesley Willis. So
Yeah.
maybe that's a fun note to go out on. Wesley Willis, I discovered after the fact that he's what you call outsider music, meaning
What is
he's
that?
not a musician, but he makes music. And I guess Wesley Willis had some mental health issues, but he recorded many albums on his own with like a Casio keyboard, playing like preset music on his Casio keyboard and him singing lyrics about whatever was bothering him that day. Sometimes it was like Taco Bell or Batman. It's usually Batman. Saddam Hussein.
Or Alanis Morissette.
Alanis Morissette was the big hit single. Yes.
He's like Prince without the high heels.
Yes. But yeah, Wesley Willis. We didn't play him in store often, but we probably played him in store.
Yeah, I don't think we. I don't know what the right word for it. Couldn't play it in the store, or maybe didn't want to try playing it in the store. I did play it in the store though.
We played everything at least once. Yeah.
I mean, how else do you discover music, right?
This is how we discovered the Sultans of Ping.
Sultans of Ping, exactly.
Where's me Jumpa? Which is a great album.
Yeah, it
I
is.
still listen to it.
Let me show you something.
Sure.
Now that you said that,
That I get. Ah, that is a Sultan's Goodyear Top Trouble. Is that what that says?
Goodyear for Trouble.
Goodyear for Trouble, and it's got quite a graphic kind of cover.
That's their album after Casual Sex in the Cineplex.
And I believe we determined that Casual Sex in the Cineplex is really the only album you need.
Yeah.
And that cover art scared me away, as if the cover art on it.
You know what? It's that album. It does not even sound like the same band. Not even
disappointing.
Not even close.
They were so fun.
Yes, they were.
I owe you a huge debt for discovering that band.
And I kind of want to talk to Matty G, because if he still has that disc, I want to buy it off him.
Well, there's a 2 CD remaster that I have with like a whole disc worth of B-sides.
They remastered and re-released that?
Yes, with an entire disc worth of B-sides and liner notes and pictures. Yeah. So, yeah. That's obviously the version that I have now.
Obviously has a cult following. Like, well, they wouldn't have done that if nobody was going to buy it, right?
Exactly. And they may have done the same deal, the reissue deal, with some of the later albums. I don't know, and I don't need to find out because I only want the one.
You don't. And to be honest, you really don't need to own the album too, the physical album.
Yeah.
The songs are really all you need.
Although I want to own it because that's my thing, but you're right.
But it's not about that band. It's not about, I guess that album is rare and it's collectible and blah, 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 blah. But the songs are so silly, and like that's really where it shines, is just the music, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I actually have a
fun
copy
album.
of it. I have a copy of it that doesn't have the cover.
Oh, okay.
So I bought it somewhere. I stumbled across it. It's like it's the CD, but there's no cover, there's no back cover. It's just the disc.
But at least
so
you can get a good
it.
quality. You can get a good quality rip on your hard drive. I mean, I think it's maybe 12 songs on that album. It's like 11 of 12 songs are pretty darn good.
Yeah, and like 34 minutes or something. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So it's
Give me a ball in a yard of grass. Get in the move for a perfect pass. It's fucking hilarious. Well, buddy, thanks for showing up tonight. Maybe we'll reconvene if we can get Dave on. We'll try again. Well, hopefully he's okay and his family's okay. But thank you for doing the Four Horsemen tribute instead.
Yes. Hey, Mike, it was my pleasure. It was a lot of fun, man.
My pleasure as well. Let's go out on a song, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
This is our mutual friend, Mr. Eric Litwiller. This is an original tune from 1992 called "Don't Look Into the Dead Lights."
Oh, I thought it was "Lick My Love Pump."
No, I'd like to hear him attempt that song, but that's what we'll go out on tonight. We'll go out on Mr. Eric Litwiller with his band Heavy Cutting. Don't look into the dead lights.
Goodbye.
Have a good night. Ciao.
See ya.
And next is going to be an original that was written by Dave Grenier called "Don't Look Into the Dead Light."
stop, yeah, the rain cold, and the shit goes down. He makes the clown. Usual in this dairy town, and the body's full. He makes them all to the courageous ones who want to solve. One by one, the need is up. Time to destroy the webbing flood. Any life, time to fight. Time to fight. Don't look into the deadline. Isn't real. These on everything you feel. This is what soon. Don't you time our ending tune. Sing one is not much fun. But they should get the job done. Feel the rain. You go insane. From the one that comes up from the drain. City lights. Where the fire. Time to fight. Don't look into the deadline. Miles below, you know what I gotta go. Through these skies, leave my head in very wide. Don't have to deep in the tongue for you to think it in the spot I swear. Steady with a green shine, I do in the sound, separating the all down. Do not stand your ground, empty world in the open air. What comes here with his hard rock shell and leaves it upon the land? He's got the key to get rid of your fortune, you must take his hand. It will die alongside the soul of the innocent girl. Look into the daylight. Look into the daylight.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to CXLR Television's coverage of Homegrown Talent Night 91. I'm here with Gary, who is the drummer for Heavy Cutting. How you doing, Gary?
I'm doing pretty good, thanks, Mike.
How did you feel out there? That was a pretty electrifying performance.
Yeah, I rather liked it. It was pretty good, powerful.
Tell me this, do you get tired after all that drumming?
Yeah, a little bit, especially after my stool. It kind of fell off the back of the stage, but I recovered it. It was all right.
Certainly hope you have your Men in Speed stick on tonight.
Oh, yes, for sure.
Working overtime. But let's get back to Jeff Hodgson because we're ready for some more band action. Thanks a lot, Gary.
All right, thank you.
All you pretty faces in the crowd might want to